Warren Buffett wasn't always the wealthy, influential figure we know today. He grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, in a middle-class family. His father, Howard, was a stockbroker and a member of the U.S. Congress, but their family wasn't rich. Despite this, young Warren had big dreams. From a very young age, Warren showed an unusual interest in numbers and business. He started with small ventures, like selling gum and Coca-Cola to his neighbors. He had a natural talent for spotting opportunities, even as a child. He wasn't just playing with toys, he was learning about the value of money. By the time he was a teenager, Warren had already read books about investing and was already saving money. He was making small investments in the stock market with his paper route earnings. Everyone around him saw a young boy with big ideas, but few understood the depth of his ambition. He knew, even at a young age, that he wanted to be successful in business. While his friends were dreaming of other careers, Warren's focus was always on the world of finance. Little did anyone know that this young boy, with a deep love for investing, would one day become one of the richest men in the world. The bank manager was a man who had seen it all. He'd spent years working at the same bank, handling loan requests day in and day out. His job was simple: approve loans for people he believed would pay them back, and reject the ones that seemed too risky. He had a system, a way of thinking that had worked for him for years. He trusted his instincts, and in his world, he was never wrong. The manager had been in the business long enough to recognize the patterns. Most loan requests came from people with dreams, but no real plan. They were often young, eager, and filled with ambition, but lacking the experience or knowledge to make their ventures successful. Over time, the manager had become skeptical, believing that only those with proven records had a chance of succeeding. That day, like many others, the manager sat behind his desk, reviewing applications. He was confident, even a little proud of how well he knew his job. To him, it was simple. Money was about security, and he would only back people who had something to offer in return. To him, business was about risk management, and taking chances was something to avoid. He wasn't worried. After all, he had turned down countless requests. Most of the time, those people simply moved on. And if they didn't, they learned to keep their dreams in check. The manager had always believed in the power of practical thinking, and today, that's exactly what he planned to do. Warren walked into the bank that morning with a quiet confidence. He wasn't dressed in a suit like most of the people who walked through the bank's doors. He wore a simple shirt, a pair of trousers, and carried no briefcase. He looked like just another young man hoping for a break. But there was something different about him. His eyes were focused, his posture straight, and there was a quiet determination in his step. He approached the counter and asked to speak with the bank manager. The receptionist, used to seeing all kinds of hopeful borrowers, didn't think much of it. A young guy coming in, asking for a loan, it wasn't anything new. She directed him to the manager's office. When Warren sat down in front of the bank manager, he explained his idea clearly and without hesitation. He wasn't asking for a handout. He was asking for a loan to invest in businesses he believed had potential. His plan was methodical, even though it was simple. He didn't waste words. He just laid out his vision, step by step. Warren's voice was calm but firm. He explained that he'd been studying the stock market and business for years. He knew the risks, but he also understood the rewards. He wasn't interested in just making money. He wanted to build something lasting. He wasn't like the other young applicants who came in with unrealistic dreams. Warren had done his homework. He had a clear plan. But despite his calmness and clear vision, the bank manager wasn't convinced. He had heard it all before. Ambitious young people with big dreams and little experience. The bank manager, still skeptical, didn't see a successful future in Warren's request. To him, Warren was just another dreamer, not someone who could turn a loan into something real. The bank manager listened carefully, but he couldn't shake off his doubts. Warren's plan sounded good in theory, but to the manager, it seemed too risky. He leaned back in his chair, looking at Warren through his glasses. "Look, Warren," he began, his voice calm and businesslike. "You've got some interesting ideas, but the reality is, we can't approve loans for people who don't have the track record to back them up." Warren's expression didn't change, but his eyes showed a slight flicker of disappointment. He'd prepared himself for this moment, but hearing it out loud still stung. The manager continued. "You're a young guy with no real business experience. We've seen hundreds of people like you come in here with dreams, but without the means to follow through. It's too big of a risk for us." Warren sat quietly, absorbing the rejection. He had hoped that the manager would see the potential, but now it was clear that he wouldn't. He wasn't angry, he knew how the system worked. The manager wasn't in the business of taking risks on the unknown. The bank manager, however, seemed satisfied with his decision. "I'm sorry, but I can't approve this loan," he said, pushing the paperwork aside. "If you have something more concrete to offer in the future, maybe we can talk again, but right now, it's just not feasible." Warren stood up, still composed. "Thank you for your time," he said softly before turning to leave. As he walked out of the bank, the manager returned to his routine. He didn't think much of Warren's departure. To him, it was just another rejection, another dreamer moving on. He felt no remorse. He had made the right decision, he was sure of it. Warren left the bank quietly, his disappointment hidden behind his calm demeanor. He wasn't giving up. But the manager would never know that. As Warren walked away from the bank, the weight of rejection settled on his shoulders. But it didn't break him. He didn't feel defeated. He didn't feel angry. Instead, there was something else. Something stronger. A quiet fire had been lit inside him. He knew that the manager had seen him as just another dreamer, another young man with big ideas and little to show for them. But Warren understood that success didn't come from one loan or one chance. It came from persistence. It came from hard work and learning from every setback. Over the next few years, Warren threw himself into the world of investing with everything he had. He studied more, read more, and made smarter moves. While others his age were still trying to figure out their careers, Warren was already testing his theories in the real world. He didn't have much, but he had his knowledge and his determination. He started small, investing in companies, finding opportunities where others saw none. With each success, his confidence grew. But he never forgot the rejection. It fueled him, pushed him to work harder, to prove that he was more than just a young man with a dream. He was someone who could turn his dreams into reality. Warren's small investments slowly grew into bigger ones. His vision sharpened, and his portfolio expanded. By the time he was in his late 20s, he wasn't just making money. He was building something. He was laying the foundation for what would become one of the greatest fortunes in the world. Warren didn't need the bank's approval. He had his own path to follow, and no rejection would stop him from getting there. Years passed, and Warren's name started to appear in the news. Slowly, the world began to recognize the man who had turned his investments into billions. By the time he was in his 50s, Warren Buffett had become a legend in the world of finance. His reputation as one of the smartest investors of all time was solidified. People everywhere were talking about him, how he started from nothing and became one of the richest men in the world. But as Warren's success grew, so did the quiet regret of the bank manager. He had heard Warren's name on the news and remembered the day he had turned him away. The manager was no longer the confident, sure man he once was. Now, sitting behind his desk in the same office, he couldn't help but think back to that moment, years ago, when he had dismissed Warren's loan request. He replayed the scene in his mind, Warren, sitting across from him, calm and determined. He had heard all the right things, the plans, the strategy, the ambition, but at the time the manager had only seen the risk. He didn't see the vision, he didn't see the man who would go on to build an empire. As Warren's face appeared in the newspapers and on TV, the bank manager felt the sting of regret. He had turned down someone who, at the time, seemed like just another young dreamer. And now, that same man was a global icon. The manager couldn't escape the thought that he could have been a small part of that success. If only he had taken a chance, if only he had seen the potential. But it was too late now. Warren had already made his mark. The manager could only watch from his office, knowing he had missed an opportunity to be part of something truly extraordinary. Years went by, and Warren's empire continued to grow. His investments were now worth billions, and his influence stretched across the globe. Warren was no longer just an investor, he was a symbol of success, of what could be achieved with vision, determination, and a relentless drive to learn. One day, Warren walked into the same bank where he had once been denied that loan. It was a different feeling now. He wasn't the young man seeking approval anymore. He was a man who had built something remarkable from the ground up. As he entered the bank, he was greeted by a receptionist, who quickly recognized him. Word had spread about his success, and his reputation was well known. She hesitated for a moment before calling the bank manager, who had been working there all these years. The manager, now older and more experienced, answered the call. When he heard that Warren Buffett was in the building, he froze for a moment. He hadn't expected this. Warren coming back to the same bank, after all these years. The bank manager's heart raced. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew this was a moment he would never forget. Warren walked into the manager's office, and the man immediately recognized him. His face flushed with a mix of emotions: admiration, awe, and of course, regret. Warren smiled and extended his hand. "Good to see you again," Warren said, his voice calm, but there was a hint of something deeper. "I just wanted to come in and thank you." The manager blinked, unsure of what Warren meant. "Thank me? For what?" "For rejecting my loan," Warren replied, with a small grin. "It made me work even harder to get where I am today. I never held it against you. In fact, I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to me." The bank manager stood there, speechless. He had no words. He knew he had missed an opportunity, but he also knew that Warren had turned that rejection into his greatest motivator. And in that moment, the bank manager understood: some people can't be held back by anything, not even rejection.